We were set up by Kate Rowland about 10 years ago, and the purpose was to find, nurture and develop writers. And it's been brilliantly successful as that. Over the years, its purpose has changed slightly, in that my aim now is to make Writersroom the indispensable development engine of fiction in the BBC. That's what I want us to be. I want us to be stitched into every bit of the BBC that uses writers. I want to serve writers and the BBC, I suppose, is the short answer. There's a lot longer answer that covers the detail.
And what do you think makes the Writers' Room so important to the industry?
I think we are a unique portal for new writers. They come via the website or through our outreach, our workshops, our talks, whatever. We are quite unique in that. We're also unique in that we take unsolicited scripts twice a year, which is a sort of major undertaking, actually. And that we meet loads of writers. We develop a lot of diverse talent. We have an open door policy, which I think is quite unique. And what I'm now trying to do as well is make sure that all of our initiatives and all of our projects have tangible outcomes for writers as well, so that we don't just go, well done, you've written a great script. I now try and feed them into other parts of the BBC. I sort of partnership with different areas of the BBC, introduce them, develop them, and try to work with the other bits of the BBC for their particular development needs. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. And then you mentioned there sort of some of the different initiatives that you have within the Writers' Room, so one of which is taking groups of writers away to do workshops. Can you tell us a little bit more about that side of the Writers' Room?
Okay, so I actually pulled some stuff together for a meeting the other day. So apart from being the portal and the public face of the BBC to the UK writing community, we do a huge amount of in-house development work. And we do that by addressing specific needs of the BBC department. So quite often they come to us with a request. So Wolfblood came from a request from CBBC. So we took 8 writers away. Some people suggested by CBBC, but quite a lot suggested by us. And out of that 4-day residential workshops, talks, and sending them off to write, develop pictures and come back, and then getting notes on their pictures, sending them off again, came in fact 2 commissions. So Wolfblood came out of that, and Worst Year of My Life came out of it, which is a co-production with ABC in Australia. I think it's really important we work in partnership with other areas and we don't just sit on its own over here as Writers' Room. I think it's really important that we're stitched into production, and whether that's Indies or BBC. Historically we've worked with Indies as well. Obviously the future is unknown as at this point. I think it's important to stitch people into production because, again, it's concrete outcomes for writers. I mean, you can develop a writer and tell them they're great, but unless they're actually meeting producers, unless they're actually developing work, you know, it's not really an end of itself.
And From Darkness is another title that we were talking about, and it's a crime series that BBC Worldwide is going to be distributing. Yeah. We've seen a few clips and it is looking absolutely fantastic. Yeah,
I hear it's looking fantastic. Everything sounds good that's come from it. So that's an example of the sort of thing we do with our residentials. But aside from that, we do targeted talent searches. So we have our unsolicited windows. But people will come to us and say, we want to target particular things. So when we were looking at the issue of transgender and comedy, we did a search for a transgender comedy. We had a couple of great writers came out of that, and in the end one of them was commissioned, and that is Boy Meets Girl. I don't know if anybody's seen that yet, but you know, it's a delightful and completely different comedy.
And in terms of the unsolicited scripts part of the Writers' Room, so you take submissions from any writers and you guarantee that you're going to read them all and get back to people. How does that process work?
All right, well that's twice a year. We used to do a lot more, but it is hugely time consuming and massively, it's a huge commitment as well. Obviously we've got a great team of readers and so on. So we've cut it down recently to 2 windows a year, one for comedy and one for drama. The comedy one closed recently and we had 2,200 entries, so that gives you an idea of the scale of it.
But you read the first 10 pages of every single one
Every single one.
So what are you looking for in those first 10 pages?
We're looking for the writer, not the project. Because I think if you're outside the BBC, you've no idea that you've just commissioned a transgender comedy or whatever. You know, you might be pitching the wrong project at the wrong time. So we're looking for the writer, we're looking for a voice, we're looking for a comedy, we're looking for laughs. Something original, something I haven't read before, something that makes you want to keep reading, and that, you know, is really seriously key. You know, if you're slogging away through 10 pages, there isn't really much point carrying on. A lot of writers come to me with their BBC Two hard-hitting idea, and they're a new writer and they want to get this on. Well, do you know, so does everybody else in the whole world, including all the A-list experienced writers, and I know how many slots there are available, and I sort of think it's not kind to say, yes, you can do it at this stage as a new writer. But what I can say, you've got some great ideas, you know, let's develop those ideas, and let's look where the opportunities are. For example, you could develop this for radio. Radio takes a lot of new writers. Do you know, have you thought about writing for children's? CBBC takes a lot of new writers. I try to point them to where the opportunities actually are. CBBC does some extraordinary stuff, actually, with comedians and YouTubers and whatever, taking them on to things like Brastermouse and all sorts of places. So I try to send them to sort of where the opportunities are. And where I think a writer's got a really great idea and a really good calling card script, I will make those introductions to the drama departments.
And the continuing drama writers' room now falls under the writers' room, so you're actively looking for writers for that now.
We are now running the continuing drama shadow schemes, which I personally ran for drama in the past. And that's a great starting place for new writers. Now, the continuing dramas are not for every writer. And yet, most of the A-list writers in this country have done a stint on the continuing dramas. You know, Sally Wainwright did Corrie, Peter Bowker did Casualty. I mean, there's an endless list. They're a brilliant way in, and we run a couple of introduction to continuing drama workshops a couple of times a year, which are always oversubscribed. We have sort of a waiting list for them. And then we run the shadow schemes. That's another great way in for writers, and we take quite a few playwrights that come in that way because you write a shadow script to serial storylines, but you write a script as if it was for broadcast, and we employ a dedicated one-to-one script editor to take them through that process. So they have really high quality training, as well as a couple of formal training days and meeting all the editorial teams and so on. Yeah, so I think that's another great way in for a new writer to learn to screenwrite.
And on the subject of appealing to younger audiences, Laura Kay is an experiment the Writers' Room has been behind in terms of innovating on the digital platform. Can you tell us a bit more about that show?
The Last Hours of Laura Kay came out of a discussion of, you know, what does drama look like in the digital world? Because part of our brief as well is to be a bit of a lab, you know, sort of looking at new forms of drama. And comedy, I should say, but not just drama. But, you know, we're trying to be at the cutting edge just to say, what does it look like? You know, what's that world do? And yes, again, we took a group of writers away, brainstormed all sorts of ideas, and this was Kate Rowland sort of before me, so I can't take the credit for it, but I think it's a rather brilliant project. And they came up with the idea of, it's a girl who's been murdered, but what you've got is 24 hours worth of CCTV of the last day of her life. And all of that is loaded up online. And Rachel, who played the main part, was also one of the writers, and she was very keen to say the female victim is a person, this is her life, you know, and you get to know her through this. But you've also got access to all her social media, you've got access to all her Facebook, and all her friends' Facebooks, and you've got access to all her texts and voicemails, loads and loads of material, basically. It's all uploaded, and it's a mystery. You're trying to work out who killed her.
What are you excited about in terms of the Writers' Room and the future?
Well, I'm really excited about all our projects, I have to say. I think we've got some great things in the pipeline. I was just up in Birmingham yesterday talking about their writer in residence we're going to set up there between the Birmingham Ret, Archers, Homefront and Doctors. I think there's all sorts of initiatives coming up that I think are genuinely exciting. We're also kicking off a director's mentor scheme. This is accidental it's come under Writers Room because it's something that I initiated last year when I wasn't Writers Room. And I've just got funding for. So Skill Set Directors UK and BBC. So we're going to run a director's mentor scheme as well, because it's an impossible business for new directors to get into as well. So that's something else I'm also excited by. I mean, for me, it's just a matter of not spreading ourselves too thin, making sure that everything we do well, and that everything has positive, tangible outcomes for writers.